I don't know how like online you are, but there was a big Mephisto conversation around WandaVision, and
Yes.
we were all going nuts. So 14 minutes into the first episode, there's this moment where I could have sworn that's where the episode was going.
Yeah, Mephisto. That's interesting. I was just reading about that character. It'd be interesting if he ever showed up in the MCU.
Was that an intentional like thing to rile up fans, or am I just still stuck in like what happened around WandaVision?
It's honestly just a super weird coincidence. Like, it's genuinely a reference to Loki, the horns. He fell from, he was cast out of heaven. That's what it's a reference to. But yeah, because I mean, we filmed that like a long time before, I think WandaVision must have been in post when we filmed that. So yeah, I did see all the stuff about that online and I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. But no, it's more relevant to the themes of our show, and it's not a nod to that character.
Come on. What did you expect?
WandaVision was such a wonderful exploration of grief, Falcon and Winter Soldier, about identity. What would you say that Loki is the exploration of?
So for me, a really central theme is anyone truly good or bad? And that gray area in between. And, like, are we always going to be defined by our past actions, or can we move past those? And I think Loki, for me, he's the perfect example of that gray area, right? And he flips between good and bad constantly. And I think that is definitely a central question, not just with Loki, but across the entire show.
It's about, what makes a villain, what makes a hero, and can you be both? That's the cool thing is movies sort of have to, big blockbuster superhero movies, you sort of have to play in the good and evil sort of thing. TV, there's more time and you get to play in the shades of gray. And I think that's where Loki's always lived. And so I think it's about Loki further just examining who he is as a character and why he is the way he is.
We love Loki, and we've kind of always seen him like paired with Thor, or kind of like tethered to like the Asgard stuff. How different is it this time around now that he's kind of away from all of that? What would you say the biggest like difference is from what we've seen in the past?
Well, he's on his own, and so he's got to fend for himself. He doesn't have anybody else he can look to take advantage of to get out of jams and everything, and he doesn't have anybody he can blame things on. The messes he's making now are his own. And that's not to say that he was ever passing the buck. It's just, this is a guy who's always really been connected to Thor and really sort of survived by being close to power and then seeking to overthrow that power. Now he's on his own at the bottom of a ladder, at the bottom of a food chain. And so it's just a totally new dynamic for him to be playing with.
He's had one of the best arcs across the last 10 years of the MCU. And, I think, but we don't have that guy that we had, that we saw in Infinity War with the guy from Endgame, who's obviously Avengers Loki. And I think the exciting thing for me as a storyteller is that he's in a very different headspace to the Loki we've seen over the last 10 years. And, we're putting, God of Mischief into this bureaucratic kind of organization. And how is he going to cope within that place? So, yeah, I think we're taking him to a very new corner of the MCU. And there's a lot of fun to be had with that. So the real key thing for me and the writing team and Marvel was just, there has to be a good reason to go back in with this character. And definitely taking him to new places, but paying respect to, the character that's come before, because he is so beloved.
Tom obviously, brings full like Tom to this. Like, he cracks me up in the first few episodes. So he obviously knows this character inside and out. How closely did you two work together? Because I saw he's also executive producing. Like, did you have these moments where Tom would be like, oh, Loki would actually say this, or anything like that you can think of?
Yeah, of course. Tom and I worked really closely and became great pals. That was one of the great pleasures of the show. He came to the writer's room and sat with all of us and just spent a full day answering questions, talking about the character, talking about, the motivations behind choices he made in the very first Thor movie when he was shaping the character with Kenneth Branagh 10 years ago. And then after the writer's room wrapped, when I was rewriting all the episodes, Tom and I, we had a couple of marathon breakfasts, I would say, around LA when he was in town, just talking about the character. You know, how would Loki say certain things? Tom's English, I'm from Georgia. So there were, it's like, all right, let's make sure Loki doesn't quite sound like he's from the South. And so we were refining it together, but that was an amazing collaboration.
A really key thing for us was talking about the memories that Loki sees in the time theater, and something that Tom was saying that he definitely was contributing to that discussion, because we were like trying to make sure, you know, like it's important that, you know, we had that moment with Frigga, and like, but there was also other moments, like the hopeful moments, like I'm here. And Tom was very like, you know, like we have these amazing actors and Tom is an encyclopedia of Loki knowledge. So it was amazing to have his input into that.
Endgame did the time travel, the time heist. And of course it was like so debated and dissected by the fandom. So I don't even know if you can like put this into like a brief sentence, but like wrapping your head around like the time concept, was that something that you would like spring up at night and be like, oh wait, God, that doesn't make sense, I gotta go rewrite that part?
Yeah, I would not even sleep at night. There was nothing to spring up from. I was so stressed. That was certainly probably the biggest challenge of the show. Was Endgame was a movie about time travel, but ultimately when that movie's over, you get to walk out and it's like, well, it made sense and it all worked. But this is a TV show, and our time travel logic is going to have to sustain week by week. And that means a week of scrutiny by the fans between every episode, as they should. It's exactly what I would do if I was watching this. And so that meant that in the writer's room, we were drawing a lot of lines with other squiggly lines coming off of them on the whiteboards, because we had to essentially create a foundational knowledge of time travel in the writer's room that the TVA was going to work off of, and invent the rules of time travel so they could then be broken. That was a fun but challenging part of the job.
Please, like at some point you need to like release all the squiggles. I need to see like all of these like maps that you were making, because I'm sure it's amazing.
Yeah, I don't know. What's funny is they all probably look the same, except to all of our writers, all of whom could all start arguments with one another even a year and a half on about, no, that's right. So it was fun.
To be a fly on the wall. The mystery of DB Cooper keeps me up at night. And we finally have our answer. I have to know how this idea came up, because I thought it was so funny.
I mean, the truth is, if it wasn't going to be Don Draper, it was going to have to be Loki.
Yeah.
That's a story that I love. That's such like amazing American folklore. And in that moment happened to be the perfect way to sort of illustrate why does the TVA not interfere with that sort of thing. Helps prove Mobius's point. And Kate, you know, she just shot the hell out of that, and really, it's this just amazing little detour that was. I remember when I wrote it, I was like, well, you know, you never quite know if that'll make it in, but it made it in, and we're so glad it did.
We got to pour one out for Casey. I think he's going to be a fan favorite of everybody. I love him.
Yep. Eugene's amazing. He brings some great little levity to that. It's based on a character in the comics who's just at the TVA, he's just an alien who wears a train conductor hat. And
I didn't know he was actually from the comics. That's great.
Yeah, he's just I think has one line, but we always laughed about him. And so, you know, Casey, he's near and dear to all of our hearts.